I just want to start with a shout out to all of the Myers-Briggs Jays in the room who may find this entire month of emerging and exploring possibility to be deeply uncomfortable, so pat on the back for showing up. Carl Jung said that the paradox is one of our most valuable spiritual possessions. A religion becomes inwardly impoverished when it loses or waters down its paradoxes, because only the paradox comes anywhere near to comprehending the fullness of life. End quote. I was visited by a paradox during the birth of my first child. It appeared to my mind's eye as a nebulous presence, like a rough-edged rain cloud, uniform gray, but shimmering with rainbows chasing along its edges, appearing and disappearing, that gave me the impression it was deeply colorful, but only in a spectrum I could not perceive. It was an uncollapsed waveform of potential. This presence in my imagination, in my mind, was hovering near the ceiling. You can imagine it here in this room. It was clearly inside the room, the labor and delivery, where I was in the hospital in Gainesville, Florida. But it was also equally, obviously to me, much, much bigger than the room. I knew intuitively it was there to witness the birth of my child. I suspected it did that for all children. It was just their business as usual. I can only describe this presence as pure witness. It felt both deeply present, while also somehow aloof, distinct, and separate from me. It seemed to be a blend of that perfect potential mixed with perfect generativity, as if someone had managed to blend chaos and order. A paradox indeed. I think we begin to describe the infinitude of possibility held within the realm of uncertainty only with the help of paradox. And here's the thing about uncertainty and that paradoxical presence that held me in its intimate and aloof regard. Uncertainty can become anything. That perfect potential can emerge as anything based on the interplay of our choices, a dance as complicated as any weather pattern. That means the act of choosing at any given moment and the uncertainty from which those choices spring has a grim side too, such as when we as moral agents committed to principles of love and justice find ourselves nevertheless living within a rising tide of global authoritarianism that matches the rising tides of our oceans as we witness our habitat collapsing in real time. Not to mention being weeks away from what feels like an epically critical presidential election. We may find ourselves tossed between hope and despair as we consider the future that could blossom from these seeds of these uncertain times. So, how are we, as people of faith, to maintain spiritual sustenance enough to continue working for justice, working for milestones of love and care, when the now sometimes makes the future seem so grim? When the possibilities of healing and resolution are not guaranteed, but constantly unfolding, feeling as if it's playing ping pong with our spirits. I believe we weather these spiritual storms in currents that toss us this way and that sometimes by weighing anchor with our faith. And to do that, to find a way to remain anchored, faithful, and assured by something weightier than either hope or despair, we need to get cozy with claiming our faith in uncertainty. Here's one example of what that might look like from my own life. On February 15th, 2017, I was at one of my regular ophthalmology appointments to monitor the mysterious chronic eye inflammation that was aging my eyes 10 to 20 years faster than the rest of my body. Things were mostly stable at that point. The retinal scan, however, did not go as expected. My doctor came in with the results of that scan looking, well, worried. And I don't know about your experiences with the medical community, but an expression of unfiltered concern on your doctor's face is not exactly inspiring of confidence, right? She told me not only did she want to refer me to a retina specialist, but that she wanted me to be sure to see him within 7 days. I left that appointment, the specialist's phone number in my hand, and a feeling of profound dread in my heart. I was able to call the specialist right away, and I was able to secure an appointment on day 7, meaning I had 6.5 days to stew, knowing rationally there was nothing I could do about whatever was happening within my eyes, and I wouldn't know anything for at least a week. Now, I can't say exactly what it is that happened within me at that moment, but something shifted for me. I flipped the script. In my own mind, I realized that not knowing the outcome put me in a powerful position of uncertainty. While the plot was still being written that week, I decided to effect some changes. I claimed uncertainty as a tool, and I got to work. I used my not knowing as a source of power. It was like I was in the box with Schrodinger's cat, with the lid due to come off in a week. That meant I had a week to play with the story as I understood it, while the denouement was yet unwritten. I had a week to turn my attention toward what would empower me and inspire hope, instead of spending each day enduring a passivity that would stress me out and leave me feeling helpless and immobilized. Instead, I chose to lean into the beneficial aspect of uncertainty, possibility. It wasn't like I was suddenly happy and carefree. My feeling was more like an empowered and motivated discontent, instead of a disempowered and passive discontent. It was like a sense of urgency mixed with purpose. It gave me a sense of direction. So during that week, before that retinal specialist appointment, I pulled the emergency brake on my life. I sought different kinds of support for my mind and my body. I rethought, revised, and recommitted to a more balanced work life, which meant working fewer hours. And I let the people who gave me that work know that my health came first, and they agreed. I had a sense of liberation and purpose and a lot of support from my community of friends and family, and I acknowledge the immense privilege at work in many of the choices I made that week. The point of this story is not that on day 7, I was told by the specialist that I had a hole in my retina that missed my vision center by 50 microns. That's less than a hair's breadth. And that I was very, very lucky. And I'm not even implying that my luck was a result of my exploration with uncertainty. Ironically, I will never know. The point is that in a moment of dread, vulnerability, uncertainty, and need, when the outcome looked bleak, I remembered that the future, however bleak it seemed to me in that moment, was not yet written. By engaging possibility, I reached out to people I would not have otherwise connected with. I engaged in some profound self-care that I would not have otherwise pursued or even considered. And that sense of hope I was able to latch onto allowed me to think creatively, to be more at peace with myself, to let go of some things, including some of my dearly held self-concepts, and to feel free while still connected to an urgency of purpose that helped me make some challenging decisions about my life. Because what it boils down to, dear beloved friends, you cannot have possibility without uncertainty. And Heisenberg would be the first to tell you, uncertainty is built into the system. So if we have to have it, if we have to have uncertainty, it's a feature of life, wouldn't it be great to be able to befriend it? If you have ever experienced immobilizing despair, even moments of it, or dread about uncertain futures, whether personal or national or global, I will invite you to try this small exercise with me now in embracing curiosity, not because it will change anything out there, but because it might change something in here. If you instead to use these moments differently, that's fine too. For those who will, let your breathing deepen now, inhaling and exhaling at your natural but engaged pace. Find a position that is both comfortable and alert, and you can close your eyes if you find that helpful. In this relaxed space, conjure in your mind the last time you experienced not knowing as something wonderful or exciting, or it might feel like a pleasing anticipation. Perhaps you've just received an unexpected gift and you haven't opened it yet. You don't know what's inside. Or perhaps there was a time in your life when you simply felt vibrant and determined despite challenging circumstances. Or you could simply relax into your personal version of the knowing, like in our whistle stop story. Feeling connected and powerful within this undeniably complicated world. Do you have something in mind, in heart? This moment, this chemistry of anticipation and curiosity, or pleasant surprise, or even transcendent capital K knowing, despite the facts, is where the magic of uncertainty can transform us. This is the uncertainty, the engaged willingness to possibility where faith is born and nourished. Faith as an abiding knowing that remains open and curious, receptive and adaptive. It is a knowing that does not resist change because it exists alongside and within the ultimate reservoir of change, uncertainty. Possibility. This can be an anchor for deep faith. Thank you. Feel free to come back to the room or let your eyes remain closed in this breathing space as long as you like. Because yes, the story of our world can be grim sometimes, and it is also full of beautiful possibilities, moments when justice is served and breakthroughs of ingenuity and cooperation open windows for us when doors seem to close. The Reverend Nancy MacDonald Ladd wrote, "We can be both broken and called forth. The idea of wholeness or justice as some kind of perfectionism, that we have to have everything just so precisely, neatly quantified, planned for, organized, or codified, this is an unattainable illusion that separates us from each other. Because we get so caught up in the logistics of perfection and the expectations of our assumptions that we forget that we are moral agents of infinite imagination, whose most powerful tool is our capacity to be with each other, no matter what. To breathe with each other, to leave room for spirit, for possibility. Carl Jung also said, things have gone rapidly downhill since the Age of Enlightenment. I'm sorry, I read your mission statement and I do believe it, and I am a believer in reason, but he seriously said that they've gone rapidly downhill since the Age of Enlightenment. That's because reason alone is figuring out the knowable. But faith is about knowing the paradoxical. Reason gives us words. Faith takes words and gives us meaning. Jessica Goldberg, a licensed clinical social worker, parent, and activist in my hometown of Gainesville, Florida, and also my beloved cousin, once told me, we feel more held when we don't know together. There's a communion in not knowing and learning together. And in the end, it isn't really about knowing stuff, right? So much as it is loving each other while we work out our way back to the knowing, the collective knowing, the beloved community, being with each other, building relationships with grit and love and elbow grease and care and patience and forgiveness and courage. With patience, and especially making a place at the table for uncertainty. So when I named this sermon Faith in Uncertain Times, I suspected that most people would infer it was going to be about how we have faith despite uncertainty. I hope that what I have shared with you today inspires you to consider that it is the uncertain times and the uncertainty itself in which we must have faith. That we have faith because of uncertainty. The liminal spaces, those in-between shifting changes, changing spaces, this is where all change happens. And isn't that what we want? Change? Our principles and values as Unitarian Universalists urge us towards courage and action in these liminal times with fierce love, because the times of change are often the most painful, the most vulnerable. But this pain and vulnerability can also call us to a deeper commitment to our role in that change. The liminal times are when we need each other and our faith the most. But it is also when our faith can blossom into something unimaginably, unpredictably, unexpectedly beautiful. So find each other in moments of uncertainty. Lean in, reach out, believe in the power of possibility born from paradox because it believes in you. Believe in the good even if you don't know what will happen. Believe in the good because you don't know what will happen. Have faith when it doesn't make sense to. Have faith because in uncertain times, it doesn't make sense to do anything else. Blessed be.